Hi, it's Paul, and in today's video I'm an old man with some thoughts, tips and tricks on measuring mitres. So that's how to measure mitres and transfer them onto your workpiece. Many ways of doing it. Let's go and have a look. A mitre joint is a joint between two pieces, quite often timber in our world, building or homes or whatever you want to call it. And it's a joint that has two equal angles or equal angled cuts on the end of the pieces of timber to make them join together and look nice. Interestingly, the internal angles on this, on skirting board, aren't mitres. They are what's called a coping joint, but that's for another video. Here you can see one on a handrail. It doesn't have to be a 90-degree overall angle, it can be any angle, but the angle between the two pieces of timber is equal on both sides. Here's a window board or sill, picture frame. Quite often the joint will look like it's exactly 90 degrees but isn't, and that is one of the issues. That's why we need to be able to measure the joint and transfer it onto our workpiece. If all mitre joints were 90 degrees and therefore 45 degrees for the actual mitre, the world would be a simpler place, but that isn't, and that's what often catches us out. Here you can see that mitre joints aren't just inside the home. This is on a piece of decking, and here we are on a piece of landscaping on a big raised bed. So mitre joints can be anywhere. Let's have a look at how we measure them. So I've built myself a bit of a fake wall here. I've done it at an odd angle deliberately because I don't want to do it at 90 degrees, and because if it was 90 degrees it would just be two 45 degrees mitres. So I've done it at an odd angle to just show you the different ways from cheap to expensive that we can measure and transfer our mitre angles. So first of all, a piece of cardboard or thick paper. Take my paper, a couple of bits of masking tape, and I get my rule, steel rule, plastic rule, doesn't matter, and I draw a line along from the wall and another line along from the other wall. Just zoom that in a bit so you can see it a bit better. So we've got a line there and a line there. That angle is exactly the same as that angle. So what I'm going to do now is take the tape off, throw it away. Now I'm going to get my knife, Stanley knife, craft knife, handyman's knife, call it what you will, and I'm going to cut along those two lines. Mind your fingers, health and safety obviously. And now all I'm going to do is fold that piece of paper in half so that the two lines, the two sides, edges if you like, match up exactly. And that is our mitre angle. This is our template. So if I now put my rule back along there, line this up with it, That's our mitre angle. We're going to cut across there. If I take a piece of board, imagine this is my skirting board or baseboard, whatever you want to call it. Put it along there. And that is the angle that I'm going to cut it at. Put it the other way. And again, that's the angle that I'm going to cut it at. So, method 1, cardboard template. Simple, cheap, effective. Method 2, more cardboard, more tape. Let me zoom you out a bit. And this time I'm going to take a piece of wood. Has to be parallel, it has to be the same width right the way along. And all we do is we lay it against one wall and we mark a pencil line. And we mark a pencil line on the other side of it. Then we lay it against the other wall and we mark another 2 pencil lines. That now gives us a kind of diamond shape. I'll just zoom you in a second so you can see it. Gives us a diamond shape. We're not interested in these ends, that's not of interest. What we're interested in is from that point there to the cross there. So right on the corner of the wall to that point there. And we mark a line again. And once again, that is our mitre angle. So this time, if we've got a bevel gauge or something like that, we can come along and we can set the bevel gauge to that mark, to that line. If I turn it over the other way, just double check it a little bit out. That's exactly spot on there. So again, that's our mitre angle. And if I want, I can put my marking gauge, my bevel gauge, sorry, on my piece of wood. And I can mark my mitre angle. Or I can take this to the saw and I can adjust my mitre saw so that this is my cut angle. So, method 2, 2 bits of wood and a piece of cardboard, going up in price. Method 3, more cardboard. And this time you're going to go to your kid's school bag and you're going to raid their geometry set from school. Get yourself a compass, set your compass at any random distance, doesn't matter. Ideally not quite open like that, but sort of something along those lines. And you put the point right on the corner. And you scribe yourself an arc. Now, this does work better if you can get a piece of paper to go right the way around the corner. So if you want to cut a chunk out of it so it fits. Can't see that mark too well. And what we now do is we make the compass a bit wider. And we do an arc over here, and we go to the other end of the arc there, and we do an arc over here. And again, we take our ruler, we go to the point, and we mark a line across. And once again, we come along with our mitre gauge, our bevel gauge, and that's our cut angle. So you scribe a line all the way around, then you set your compass to the end of the line, and you mark a cross out here, and you set your bevel gauge to that. Both of those last two methods are called bisecting an angle, not dissecting, not with a D, bisecting with a B, basically dividing it in two. You're taking your big angle and you're dividing it in two. Next method. So if your kids won't let you have their compass, or they haven't got a compass, why not borrow their protractor? So you take the protractor, put the rule up against one face of the wall, and put the protractor up against the other. By lining it up, you can find out that the mitre angle is about 75 degrees in this instance. I'll just zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. So 75 degrees. If I turn it around the other way and line it up, I get exactly the same. So there's some basic simple methods. So we'll then look at more expensive methods, and we will start with the angle finder. This is a Silverline one. You can get them by other makes. This is fairly cheap. When it's closed up, it's 0. When it's at 90 degrees, it's showing 90 degrees and 180. So we put that against our wall and we find our angle, and we're showing 107.1. And on this, there's a function where we can press mitre and it gives us the mitre angle of 36.4. Put it back to 107.1. Now, something that you will realise is that where I've talked about the angle of the mitre being half of that angle, 36 isn't half of 107. So there's our overall angle, 107.2. Just to illustrate that I'm not cheating, I'm going to go 107.2 divided by 2 equals 53.75, and that's saying 36.4. The reason being that when you look at the mitre angle on an angle finder, what it tells you is the angle to set the mitre saw at, because on the mitre saw it starts at 0 when it's directly across the timber. If you look at my mitre saw videos, I'll put a link to one, you'll see what I mean about setting that. So half of the angle is 53.75 in this instance, because that's half of 107.2, and the mitre angle, which we would set the saw at, is 36.4. I'll put a link to the angle finder in the description. And the final little toy we have to look at, I already have a complete video on, but I'll put it in here as well. This is a Bora Miterix. This is an angle duplicator. And what we do with this is we extend these arms and we push the Miterix against the angle. Then what we do is one arm of the Miterix comes off. Slide the other section back, and that again gives us a mitre angle. So if I go right the way back to the beginning, there's the cardboard template I set up in the beginning. Here's my Bora Miterix, and if I compare the two, they do exactly the same. So all you would do is you take this along to your saw, you'd put this section against the rear work face, you'd bring your saw blade round to meet this, exactly the same as you'd do it with this. Put this against your rear work face, bring the saw round to meet this, and that would be your cut angle. And you'd cut both pieces at that angle and they would join in the middle perfectly. Why would you buy this over having a piece of cardboard? Only really because you'd be doing it on a repeat basis. If you were doing lots and lots of mitre angles, then you'd buy, or you might buy, a Bora Miterix. If you were doing lots and lots of cuts, you might buy an angle finder. But I'd put it to you that if you're only going to do an occasional cut, then to be honest, you could just put that wrong way around. You could just get yourself a piece of cardboard or steal your kids' compasses and protractors, and you could do it that way. I bought both of these because I had multiple cuts to do. I did a whole house full of skirting board. I've done all the builds of the decking. I've done the builds of the landscape projects, the raised beds, and I was cutting a lot of angles. I actually bought this for a completely different reason. The angle finder, that was for something to do with work, but this I bought because I've got a lot of angles. I will say that by preference, I will always use a template, whether it be the Miterix or whether it be a piece of cardboard or something I've cut out of something else to set my mitre saw. The reason being that if you do it with an angle finder or with a protractor, then you've got more than one step where it can go wrong. You've got to make sure that the gauge on your mitre saw is accurate. You've got to make sure you set the saw accurately to the gauge. You've got to make sure that your protractor or your angle finder is accurate on here. You've got too many steps, in my opinion. I know there are plenty of people who use their mitre saws using the angle adjustment. For me, I much prefer to do it with a template. I use the Bora Miterix because I've used it a lot, but as I say, if you want to use a piece of cardboard, it's going to work just as well. So let's have a look at doing the internal angle, the opposite side of the wall, if you like, into the corner rather than around the corner. Bora Miterix works perfectly on internal angles. Not a problem at all, works in exactly the same way, you just don't extend the side rails on it. You set it to the angle, you take it out, you pull off one side of it, and that gives you the mitre angle, exactly the same as it did on the external angle. So that's the Bora Miterix, as I say. Personally, that's what I use probably more than any other means. Now we'll take a look at the cardboard. As we did before, bit of cardboard, bit of masking tape. Mark yourself 2 lines with a piece of parallel board, one on one wall, one on the other wall. Appreciate it's not quite so easy in real life to move the wall about to where you want it to be. Now we've got the 2 parallel lines, I can take my rule and mark between the intersection of the 2 parallel lines and the corner, and again that will give me the mitre angle. Sorry, it's not very visible, the pencil didn't come out particularly well on this camera. Turn my piece of cardboard over and I'm going to do the other side with the compass method now, but again exactly the same method as we did before. Take my piece of cardboard down so that it doesn't disappear off and go crooked. Get my compass, set it at a random dimension, scribe an arc between the 2 walls, then put the compass point at each arc, scribe an arc, put the compass point at the touch point of the wall for each end of the arc, scribe another arc, and the 2 will join up, intersect if you like, and that will give you the halfway point, which again will allow you to, as we say, bisect the angle, halve the angle, and that again will give you your mitre angle. And now with another piece of cardboard in place, tape it down again, and this time we're going to get the steel rule and we're going to mark the 2 parallel lines. That gives us the exact angle on the piece of cardboard. We're then going to take the cardboard off and we're going to cut along the 2 lines, which is exactly what we did in the very first demonstration. I'm just going to make the bit of cardboard a bit smaller. That's exactly what we did in the first demonstration, where I showed you making a template where you fold the piece of cardboard in half. So I cut down my first side, cut down my second side, there's my angle, just marking it off, and I'm going to fold it along that line, and again that's going to give me exactly half of the overall angle, which will give me my mitre angle. So it works exactly the same on an internal angle, all of it, as it does on an external angle. You can use the protractor method, but unless you're going to cut your protractor in half, because it won't fit right into the corner, you're going to have to mess about a lot more to understand the exact angle. How I've done it here is I've put the protractor flush up against one wall, and then what I'm trying to do is establish the correct distance from the wall, the other wall, both ends of the ruler, to make sure I get the right angle. It's a lot of fiddling. You could do it with a piece of the piece of parallel board I had. You could do it by using that and sliding the protractor along underneath it, but it is a bit more fiddly. It is doable though. It's just a bit of messing about. And then finally I'm back with the angle finder again, and once again open up the angle finder, switch it on, put it into the corner, put it tight up against both the walls, hit my mitre angle button, and it will tell me what the mitre angle is. But again, bear in mind that that is the angle you're going to set your mitre saw to. It's not exactly the same angle as you would see on the protractor, one of the vagaries of mitre saws. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of the different methods you can use, from cheap right the way through to expensive, of how you can measure your mitre angles and transfer them to your saw. The thing to remember, as I said, is if you're using a mitre saw and you're using the angle measurement on a mitre saw, it's not the same angle, so refer back to the bit I put in the video earlier on explaining that. Hopefully it's been some use to you. As I've said already, personally I'll just carry on using the Bora Miterix because it does the job really well and easily, and the angle finder because that's also quite good. But if you've only got the one to do, then you can just use which one you like. Links to all the bits and pieces that I've used in the video are underneath in the description or on the website www.oldmanwith.com. Like I say, hope it's been of some use to you. Hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you've got questions or comments, please stick them in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you would. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.